Good morning. Welcome into Five Clubs here on Golf Channel. Of course, you can also listen. That is PGA Tour Radio, Channel 92 on Sirius XM. And I am Gary Williams. And of course, this program is always brought to you by our great partners, starting with Century Insurance, right by you, the things they invest in the game of golf. From the USGA to the first tee, they're always doing things that make perfect sense, specifically to the game of golf. Golf Pride, when it comes to grips, they are trusted by more players at every level. I just got fitted last Monday with the new Align Max grips on all of my new clubs. Of course, Peter Millar, everything I wear. This Excursionist Flex hoodie, you can have it. Yes, including the logo right there. You can get it at petermillar.com. And of course, the cradle of American golf, that is Pinehurst. When it comes to making a trip and doing everything you can do on the course and off, nobody offers more than Pinehurst Resort. All right, you're going, where are you? Well, I'm going to explain exactly where I am. Colorado Springs, Colorado, just after 6 a.m. local time. Of course, we have been very fortunate at Signature Sports Group to be a part of the Underrated Golf Tour, which was the brainchild and vision of Steph Curry. I've got some thoughts on that coming up a little bit later on. We've got a lot to get to. Kevin Clark is going to be joining me. His program, This Is Football, on ESPN. Of course, that is an Omaha Productions show, is going to be joining me because he is somebody who understands who the PGA Tour is getting in their new CEO. So we're going to get to that. We are also going to get to the Travelers in just 1 second. But I must share with you, because you're going, okay, he's in a hotel room. I am indeed. Little story time as we get started here. 15 years ago, I was the host, the first morning host on Mad Dog Radio. I was also hosting on the PGA Tour Radio Network and was doing my show from Pebble Beach. And so the show, my radio show, started at 6 a.m. on the East Coast. So in Monterey, California, from a hotel room, I was doing my show on Mad Dog Radio at 3 a.m. for 4 hours. Can you imagine having the room next to me? You thought I needed to be institutionalized because I was literally talking for 4 straight hours. This, only an hour. But I wanted to share that with you. All right, what happened yesterday at the Travelers is why the Signature Series has a chance to be very valuable to the PGA Tour, but you have to have all the things conspire to get what you got. And when you take a look at this final leaderboard, it's not just to give you the contextual nature of looking at this leaderboard, it's also looking at what transpired and how this happened. Keegan Bradley wins for the 8th time on the PGA Tour, and he does it at the expense of Tommy Fleetwood. And that is a gutting of epic proportions for him to not be able to cross the line. He actually shot the highest score, along with Wyndham Clark, of anybody in the top 25, shooting a 2-over par round that opened the door for Keegan Bradley. He stepped right through. Russell Henley chipped in on the last to share second. Harris English, Jason Day finishing a tie for 4th. Then you see Scotty Scheffler. That is 9 straight top 10s. Rory McIlroy might have gotten kind of the psychological cleansing that he needed as he heads to London, where he's going to be for the next month. And of course, that'll include playing the Scottish Open and the Open Championship at Royal Portrush. More on those two guys before we're done here on this Monday. Brian Harman, 8th alone. And there you see Justin Thomas, who had a good week, another top 10 for him. And Lucas Glover. Lucas made a nice move as it relates to the FedEx Cup standings, going from 34th to 30th, which that is important this time of the year. You need to be as far inside that top 30 as it relates to the Tour Championship as possible. So that is the top 10. Back to the top of this leaderboard. Let's start with the fact that Keegan Bradley won this golf tournament. We'll get to all the other things that matter around this. Also, the guy who finished in a tie for second, Tommy Fleetwood, as well, because he's been so close. And this is very different from the Canadian Open because Nick Taylor made a bomb to win that, and that was extraordinary to see that. That was his not only home game, that was his national open in an unleashed and unbelievable celebration. The Keegan Bradley win, that's his home game. He is a Vermont kid. He is New England through and through. So to win this for the second time, to make a birdie on the last because the door got opened, because Tommy Fleetwood made 5 on the last, And like I said, he shot 72. So he let not only Keegan Bradley, but he let others back into this golf tournament. For Keegan Bradley, let me say this as far as his career goes. When he won his major championship, and that was something that also he shared with somebody who was a New England kid, truly, in Francis Ouimet, to show up at his first major championship and win it as he did in August of 2011 at that PGA championship. He needed help, and he got it from Jason Duffner. He needed a little bit of help yesterday from Tommy Fleetwood, and he took advantage. It's one thing to be given a little bit of help. You have to then take advantage of that help by executing, which he did by producing a 3 on the last hole. Here's the other part of Keegan Bradley's career that to me is wildly impressive. He was, along with Webb Simpson, the two guys, you could add Carl Peterson, I think to a lesser degree, Tim Clark, these guys who had made a career for themselves with an anchored putting stroke, and then it was taken away from them. And you could say for Keegan Bradley, was in his prime. Unequivocally was in his prime. It was 2016. That was 9 years ago. And Keegan Bradley at that time, when they instituted the anchor ban, the USGA and the R&A, he had won 3 times. He had won a World Golf Championship, he had won the Byron Nelson, and he had won that aforementioned PGA Championship. For him to figure out a way to not just make a living, but to win now more times after the ban than before the ban is a testament to fortitude, resilience, determination, and commitment and process. And that is a term that sometimes when I hear that, I used to find it to be a little bit too glib. I'm a huge believer in process. I think process is important personally, and clearly process is something that is invaluable professionally for professional golfers. So that alone is very, very impressive. Now, when it gets to what this means in the bigger picture, because we have not necessarily danced around the idea of Keegan Bradley being a playing captain on the Ryder Cup since the beginning of the year, because one, he's a guy who's in his mid to late 30s. He's somebody who was a relevant player. He was not the profile of what most Ryder Cup captains are, whether it be the European side, the American side. It's twilight. It's purgatory. It's that period in your career where the organizations that lead the Ryder Cup on Europe, it is the DP World Tour / European Tour. It's a small council of primarily former players. And on the American side, as we know, it's the PGA of America. And the PGA of America has become a little bit more elastic with the way that they look at the profile of the captain. Look, Steve Stricker was the first non-major winning captain that the Americans had ever appointed. But he was a guy, and even back then, several years ago, people were like, well, he could make the team. That was never very realistic, but he was such a competent player later on in his career, meaning late in his 40s, that you go, well, I guess, he could hang around the conversation, but it wasn't realistic. With Keegan Bradley, it was realistic. And that speaks to a couple of things. One, why did the PGA of America make the choice to do this, to appoint somebody who could very plausibly be on the team? And then you create what some people may not think is a quandary or a predicament. I personally think that it is. And if you feel differently, that the idea of Keegan Bradley being a playing captain shouldn't be a big deal, that's fine. I'm not here to arm wrestle you to my position that I think that the weightiness of the job, the responsibility of the job is too significant and too grand to try to do both. But they made that choice. And here is a quote from Keegan Bradley, because for the first time, and to his credit, Keegan Bradley has tried to avoid this conversation. And in his mind, he was thinking to himself, I'll entertain this conversation if I win a golf tournament, because it's going to put me in a position to where I am, in terms of the quantitative data, I'm going to be like right on the doorstep. I'm going to be, maybe in the top 12. Well, he was just outside the top 12 before the week started. and now he's very much inside the top 12. He's now ninth on the points list. Now, he said he wouldn't pick himself, but now he's in a position where he's clearly one of the 12 best American players. That is inarguable. So here is what Keegan Bradley had to say. Here's a quote from Keegan yesterday. And he said, yeah, it's insane. My whole life, every year I was out here, I wanted to play on the Ryder Cup team. And then this would be the first year where maybe I didn't want to. I just wanted to be the captain. And of course, this is what happens. But we'll see. I'm going to do whatever I think is best for the team, whether that's me on the team. This certainly changes a lot of things. I was never going to play on the team unless I had won a tournament. And so that's changed, but we'll see. And look, I applaud the manner in which he's gone about this because, first of all, I absolutely believe him that he was thinking to himself, one, I'm probably not going to be that close unless I do win a golf tournament, unless I just have this wildly productive year where I have, 10 or 12 top 10s, which, by the way, would be the most he would ever have in a single season in his career. And even if he didn't win a golf tournament, he would have been close, especially if he had performed well in the majors. And he has, one good result in the PGA Championship. He missed the cut at the Masters. He finished in the top 30 in the very recent U.S. Open. Here is where the conversation about him being the captain, here is where I fall on this. I think when you accept this appointment, you disqualify yourself in your mind of being a player, because I have talked to virtually every captain, especially the captains on the European side, about the idea of a playing captain. And not one of them has said to me with any hesitation or any pause that, I think it's something that, depending on the player and the personality of the player, that maybe it's something that we could see. Without hesitation, every single one of them has said to me, no way. There's too much that has to be done. Now, I understand that if you want to say that, well, look, this is something that these guys don't do. It's not like they're people who spend their lives trying to be coaches or captains. They're players, and it's a ceremonial appointment. It's not that anymore. This is not an exhibition of golf, and people who are holding on to that, you don't need to hold on to that anymore. It's not an exhibition of golf. It's evolved. It is one of the most important properties, not just in golf, but in all of sports. It draws in a casual audience. When you draw in a casual audience, it means that you have expanded the curiosity to now an interest level and a passion from people who otherwise could say, I'm not that interested. And that's what the Ryder Cup is. Exhibitions don't do that. Exhibitions are NBA All-Star games. Exhibitions are what used to be the Pro Bowl. And that is the other part of this conversation about the construct of making up Ryder Cup teams. I never thought it made any sense that a Ryder Cup captain, if you're going to give him this responsibility, well, damn it, give him responsibility. Let him pick half the team. It's their team. And so by taking data that is put together over the course of primarily 1 year, but then you add that the first year of this 2-year cycle, which is really built on major championships and the players, you are doing it based off of, yes, I get it. We have to do it somewhat on performance. That is stroke play performance. We are not putting 12 guys out there. When I say we, whether it be Europe or the United States, we're not putting 12 guys out there to go post a stroke play score, and at the end of 3 days, you add them up and go, hey, guess what? Your 12 guys had a lower aggregate than the other 12. That's not it. That's why when they made the decision to give half the team in terms of constructing the team to the captains, one, as somebody who covers the sport, I went, thank you. You've just made this more interesting for all of us, because you've allowed us to have a more thorough conversation about the merits of one player over the other. 2 is boring, and also 2 is not reflective of how different this competition is. including the captaincy itself. I'm going to talk more about this when we continue. By the way, Minjee Lee won a major. We're going to discuss that. I mentioned Kevin Clark. He's going to join me. He is somebody who loves the game of golf, has a real determined interest to know as much about it as he can, but he covers the NFL. And he knows the guy who's getting ready to take over and be the boss of the PGA Tour. And there was something shared about him getting career advice from that new CEO a couple of years ago that I think is important to share. We'll talk to him as well, some observations from the weekend. And yes, we are not in the friendly confines of our 5 Club studio in Charlotte, North Carolina. We are in Colorado Springs. Very proud to be a part of the Underrated Tour. This vision of Steph Curry, it is now season 4. We hope that we're going to be able to maybe originate from the Eisenhower course on the campus of the Air Force Academy, where I'm going to be for the next couple of days. We appreciate you watching on Golf Channel, listening on Channel 92 on Sirius XM. We continue with you on this Monday on 5 Clubs right after this. Welcome back into 5 Clubs here on Golf Channel. You can also listen. That's Channel 92 on Sirius XM. Of course, that is PGA Tour Radio. This segment brought to you by Golf Pride. When it comes to grips, I had a buddy over the weekend text me, all right, I'm getting new clubs. What should I get? I gave him like 9 options. Of course, they've got a million because they are the grip company trusted by more players at every level around the world. It is Golf Pride. And you can see, not in the friendly confines of our studio in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm in Colorado Springs, going to be out at the Eisenhower course on the campus of the Air Force Academy, which is a spectacular place. I'll have some thoughts on all of that before the end of the program. Minjee Lee won another major championship. Let me give you some thoughts on that. And again, Kevin Clark coming up at the bottom of the hour. Minjee Lee is somebody who now has the most major championships in the 20s, meaning since 2020. She now gets her 3rd different major championship. She wins for the 11th time on the LPGA. And, you know, when we talked about this event last week, we had Mel Reed on, and Mel clearly is showing, if you watched any of the coverage on Golf Channel and all of the live from that they had there, I thought they did a fantastic job. By the way, it was furnace-like hot there. You could tell by the players. It was blowing, 25, 30, 35 miles an hour. It was a battle of attrition. And for Minjee Lee to now win her 3rd different major is wildly impressive. She won the Evian. She won the U.S. Women's Open at Pine Needles a couple of years ago, and now she adds her 3rd different major championship, the KPMG Women's PGA, and she does it at Frisco. And there's a lot to discuss here. Let's start with her and the fact that at 29 years of age, she's now a 3-time major champion. She is becoming, and she's already been, one of the best players of this particular generation. But when you start to pile up majors and you now have more majors than anybody of your particular kind of pedigree or vintage, then you're starting to separate yourself. And now you start to talk about her and you start to discuss, well, is it possible for her to get all of them? Well, why wouldn't it be possible? She's shown the ability on all different types of setups. And that's part of this conversation is setup. Setting up major championship golf is a very interesting endeavor. And I had a conversation last night with Sinclair Eady, who's actually our chief referee on the Underrated Tour. And he's been a part of what we've been doing here as our primary rules official. And he is also on the executive committee of the United States Golf Association. And he was a rules official last week at the U.S. Open. And I had a conversation with him in the hotel lobby about the setup of Oakmont and the particular challenges that Oakmont presents. And he was telling me that he was situated over the course of the week. He was on the 18th hole. He was on the 6th hole. He was on the 9th hole. And think about that 9th hole at Oakmont. If you can remember, there are ditches right and left, and you're playing them as penalty areas, and you've got a blind tee shot. And then you had, areas outside of that. And that's one thing when it comes to rules. But then when it gets back to setup of major championships, it's supposed to be the sternest examination that these players face. it's not just knowing how weighty the accomplishment is, because that's part of why doing it and winning it is bold type on a player's resume, undeniably. But the other part of winning the major championship, it is not what they see week to week. And while some people do want to see players on the men's side and to a degree on the women's side during the US Opens be tested to where it's different even from the Masters tournament and the Open Championship, is because that is the one major where I think the general public still has a sensitivity and a curiosity and an interest in what the actual total is. There are no other majors when it comes to what do you think the winning score is going to be. It's a talking point, but it's not a driving storyline as you see as we had last week. And maybe, just maybe, the Women's PGA is going to be that. But maybe, just maybe, it had to do with where they're playing. And that gets to the future of the site itself. Because as we discussed last week, it wasn't the first kind of beta test. And I'm not calling the KPMG Women's PGA a beta test. That's a major championship. But and I mean this respectfully, but having the club professional championship there, having the senior PGA championship there, which they've already had, and now having the KPMG Women's PGA there, it's not accidental. The cadence of them delivering these events is to build their procedures and processes, because what's coming next there is the PGA Championship in 2027. And setup is going to be a very interesting thing. And you had a golf course that in the month of June, Texas is going to try you even more severely in the month of June than it will when the PGA is played in the middle of May, because it's going to be more oppressively hot. And the golf course is going to experience in Frisco, Texas, in the absence of trees. The wind's going to blow in Texas every single day, no matter what. It's going to blow 15, 18, 20 consistently. And then you're going to get days where it's going to be ripping 25 and 30. And how do you set up a golf course? And the person who set up the KPMG Women's PGA, which became a major talking point for a couple of reasons. One, scoring was as bloated as we've seen it in a long, long time. And secondly, pace of play. When you have twosomes going out and playing 9 holes in 3 hours and 18 minutes, you got a problem. You got a problem when it comes to the interest level of a viewing audience. You got a problem for fans who are on the grounds. Like, okay, let's go out and watch some golf. Yeah, I know it's 98 degrees and it's it's blowing 35, but I feel like it's a hot heat that's blowing on me and it's unrelenting. Let's go home. Why? Well, because we've been out here for 3 hours. Oh, I forgot. We've only watched 9 holes. These things are superior challenges for people. And the guy who set up the golf course is Kerry Haig, widely considered by most people who play the game at the elite level the premier setup man in the game. And you had a lot of players who thought that the setup was too much. And last night, I don't know if you heard it, but Mel Reid had what was a very compelling, interesting position on setup. And she did what was a comparative study between the LPGA and the PGA Tour. Now, you don't have to accept it as being, the best, but what I said was it was compelling. And the reason it's compelling is that I think it's going to drive the conversation. Things that are compelling advance conversations so that you finally are going to get to whatever happy medium you can get to. But here's the thing about happy mediums when it comes to setups. It ain't easy. So for them to try to figure out what is the right yardage, the right pin locations based on the firmness of the greens, all of those things are why golf is interesting to begin with. Because unlike everything else that's been pretty much, including the NFL, most of it now it seems like is played indoors. Even markets that you historically associate with being, oh gosh, nothing like playing a game in Minnesota back at Metropolitan Stadium, you're going indoors. The environment is exactly the same. That's why golf is different. That's why it's interesting. And that is why, getting back to the champion, her doing what she did is so impressive. She separated herself on as difficult and a challenging a setup as maybe the women are going to see. Forget this year. Who knows? Maybe 5 years. That's why the conversation about setups is interesting. And I think, getting people who do this for a living and getting players who are current players and getting people who played at an elite level like Mel Reid, who was a 4-time Solheim Cup participant on the European side, to have, good discussions are why they should be had. But Minjee Lee winning, that's the story, because she has not only now won her third different major, she said, you know what, all this talk about setup, I'm going to do what nobody else can do. I'm going to be as steady, I'm going to be as rock solid as anybody out here, and I'm going to go on and win. So congratulations to her. And again, I think at 29 years of age, by the way, Nelly Korda, who's the number one player in the world, finished tied for 19th. It's a fine result, but it's not representative of certainly what she wants to be. And she shot 76 on Sunday. She's got 2 majors left. And it's not to salvage the season, but coming off what she did last year, these next 2 are going to be particularly interesting. All right, we take a break now. When we continue, I had a long conversation with him on the 5 Clubs podcast a couple of years ago. Now we bring him to Golf Channel. You see him regularly on ESPN. You're going to see him a ton when football season is here, and it seems like football season never goes away. This is football's host, Kevin Clark. Why his view on the new CEO of the PGA Tour is most interesting to me, and I think it will be to you as well. It is a Monday edition of 5 Clubs. I'm in Colorado Springs, wherever you are. Thank you for making time for us on Golf Channel and on PGA Tour Radio, Channel 92 on Sirius XM. We're back with Kevin right after this. Back in on this Monday on 5 Clubs on Golf Channel. You can also listen. That is Channel 92 on PGA Tour Radio's Sirius XM. This segment brought to you by Peter Millar. This excursionist flex hoodie that I'm wearing right now, you can have it. You can have it with that 5 Clubs logo right there, but below that neckline. It's yours at petermillar.com. All right, joining me now. He's very stylish. He generally wears a tie for his program, which I greatly appreciated. From ESPN, this is Football Omaha Productions. He is Kevin Clark. He's a passionate golfer. The last time I saw him in person, he was at the park in West Palm, taking that in for the first time, joining us from the leafy suburbs, the shadows of New York City. Kevin, my friend, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. I have to say, I'm a Golf Channel power watcher, and so when I'm working, when I'm doing anything, I always put the Golf Channel on a TV right here, and then I realized it was going to be me, so I turned it off. I don't want to see me. It's the only way for me to get me to turn off the Golf Channel, Gary, is if I'm on. I don't want to see my face up there.
Well, we hope you're the only one who flexibly made that choice this morning. I love having conversations with you. We don't have enough. You're in your lane and I'm in mine. But here, the lanes cross because the guy that the PGA Tour is getting as the new CEO is somebody you've been around. And I want to get to a little, piece of career advice that James Colgan had in a piece he wrote at golf.com last week. But give people an idea, as somebody who's been around this guy, what is the PGA Tour getting in Brian Rolapp?
They're getting someone who understands the balance between new media and old media, as well as anybody I've ever seen at the executive level as far as leagues go. They're getting somebody who understands how to balance reach and revenue. And what I mean by that is, Gary, yesterday I was at a baseball game, a Yankees game. My son loves baseball. The game started at 11:15 or 11:20 a.m. and it was on a TV channel that, frankly, I don't know. I think it may have been Roku. And that's an example of something the NFL would not have done, where you're selling off a package that nobody really understands to morning baseball. And by the way, my son was very happy because it was before his nap. But that's the kind of thing where you exchange revenue for eyeballs, revenue for reach. The NFL doesn't do that. They get both, and everything needs a proof of concept. You saw that with Thursday Night Football, where they test it out for a few years. They test it out on different networks, and they say, okay, Amazon is a fit for this, which, by the way, was a huge leap because no streaming package had ever been that robust before. But they wanted to see a proof of concept. They wanted to see that people were going to be able to change their behavior and tune in for a big Thursday night game. If they put Lamar Jackson versus Joe Burrow on Thursday night, they want to see that. They're not going to rush into anything. I think that's the most important thing in this era, because it's really easy to go out and say, we're going to sell to the highest bidder. But in an increasingly fractured media environment, you got to figure out, okay, if we take this package, if we do this initiative, is this going to reach people who've been watching us for 30, 40 years, while also gaining new fans who are just seeing it because they just got into YouTube golf? I think this is a home run. This was sort of rumored last year a little bit, and I was stunned because it would have been such an amazing hire for someone I thought who at that point, he's number 2 in the NFL. Maybe at some point he's Roger Goodell's successor. Maybe that's still the case. Roger Goodell's going to sign an extension. We'll see what happens there. The future is so unknowable. But I just think this is a grand slam for a sport that I love this sport, and I cover football. And so knowing how effective this marriage is going to be, I'm really excited.
Kevin, it's interesting. I used the term last week. This is a coup, and I mean that in a good way. Like for the PGA Tour, which, as you know, is very viable. Professional golf is very attractive to all the most important advertising categories. It's not like they are some fledgling enterprise, not at all. But this is a National Football League, and you just said a couple of things that I think need to be amplified. This was not somebody who just happened to have an important title at the NFL, legitimately a potential successor to the commissionership of the National Football League. Why do you think he's doing this?
So, first of all, I think that it's a great opportunity. I mean, like you mentioned, how viable pro golf is. They have deals with all of the major networks to speak of. They've got events where people want to tune in, and they've got opportunity. I mean, you want to talk about blending the old media and the new media. Who's doing that right now as a sport? And obviously it's fractured and splintered and all that stuff because you have YouTube creators and TikTok and all that stuff. Yep. But as a sport, golf has a ton of opportunities to merge those two things. And then you add in the investments the PGA Tour has gotten from NFL owners like an Arthur Blank. Maybe there was some conversations as far as that goes, but it's an amazing opportunity. I mean, I don't know a sport that I think is going to be more enticing to dive into, and not save. Saving is the wrong word, but to reinvigorate, right? When you think about the last couple of years and some of the roadblocks that the sport has had in general, I just think it's a really good opportunity. And I think that his understanding of TV deals and how to balance everything and how to grow things, I mean, that to me is the most important thing. I think that's what he's going to do. And the one thing the NFL is really good at, generating stars, making sure it's a TV show. I once heard somebody in the league office say that they know for a fact that when it's a close game and there's a high score in the game, so if it's 45-42, that's the literal recipe for amazing ratings in football. Like, they know that in the league office. And I think that that's because they're able to create these compelling characters where you tune it on. It doesn't matter if you've been following or not, but you say, hey, wow, Mahomes is playing Justin Herbert. It's Sunday afternoon. It's 35-34, and I got to watch this. And I think that you can go into other sports and try. You can't do it because there's no, Mahomes is one of one, Burrow's one of one, Josh Allen's one of one. But I think you can take those stars and you can take them to the masses in a more effective way. I think there's an NFL model. I think they can go to the PGA Tour quite quickly.
I want to get to this career advice that Brian Rolapp gave you, because I think it says a couple of things. I think it says something, about him. I think it says obviously something about you as well. When you went to him at a time when maybe you had a level of security that made you feel just that, secure, and you were considering doing something that was maybe less secure. Now, people, I mentioned this last week about The Ringer, and people are going, what? Come on, it's The Ringer, it's Bill Simmons. It's like, no, at the beginning, this is it's not a sure thing. You went to him and you asked him what he thought about you making this choice. I want you to share what his response was, and then you tell me what you think that says about him.
It's probably the advice that I've repeated most in my life to other people. When people ask me for job advice, I say this. And essentially the setup was, it was March of 2016. There was an NFL owners meetings, which is really one of the only places where everybody in the league is in the same place at the same time. And it's at these luxury resorts, and there's all sorts of events where you get to talk to whoever you want. And I had talked to Rolapp a handful of times. The first time I interviewed him actually was in 2014 when they were starting the Thursday night package. And we talked a lot about different viewpoints he had and a lot about the reach and all that stuff. So we had kept in touch, and I ran into him in Arizona at the Biltmore. And I explained to him that I had gone the month before in February to LA to meet with the Ringer. I was working at the Wall Street Journal at this time. So the Wall Street Journal was the biggest newspaper in America. There's security there. There's still a security there. It's still a huge newspaper. My wife works there. She's extremely happy there. She's not going to leave. But I was looking at it, and again, you were talking about reach. We were able to reach whoever we wanted in the Wall Street Journal. So I go out and I meet with Bill Simmons in the Ringer. At that point, they have 5 employees, and it felt great. Bill is still my idol, was certainly my idol at that point when I didn't even know him. And so I'm thinking about it and I'm saying, hey, this seems like a good opportunity. But I think a lot of people would have pause of giving up the safety of being able to call somebody and say, I'm from the Wall Street Journal, right? Please meet with me for 20 minutes because I'm from the Wall Street Journal. You go somewhere else and all of a sudden you lose that access. You lose that gravitas, I guess you could say. So I see Rolapp in Arizona, and I know how well he views modern media. And again, this is 2016. This is not 2022, 2023. And I said, Brian, what do you think here? And he said, in this era, any job in the world can be the best job. And what he explained basically, I mean, you look, Gary, at someone like Pat McAfee. What was his job? His job was YouTuber, right? And like it was to be a YouTube host, which 10 years ago you would say he's a what? He's a what? Well, he's the biggest thing in media now, sports media now, right? Because any job can be the best job in the world. And you don't have to be the sports columnist for the New York Times. You don't have to be the anchor for NBC Sunday Night Halftime, right? You don't have to have that. You create your own value. Your own, even if you're a part of something and part of legacy media, which I love being, by the way, you're still an independent contractor. You're still growing your brand. You're still sending tweets and creating TikToks that are your own, and you're trying to grow it. And I think that what he was trying to say was that you can take any platform and grow it into the biggest platform now. It is not 1994 where you have to work for the LA Times or the Miami Herald or the New York Daily News. It ain't that. In some cases, that's going to hurt you now. So you go to the Ringer and you make it the best job in the world. Or conversely, by the way, you could stay at the Wall Street Journal, but you got to make that the best job in the world. And you create a job to where the next person who takes it is going into a dream job, right? Because you grew it, and then you go on to greater things because you grew that platform, right? And so I just think it was such sage advice, Gary, because I don't think anybody was thinking about it like that back then. It was still very much, who are you with? What are you doing? What's your reach? How often are you traveling? Yep. What access are you able to get just based on who you're with, right? That was still kind of the age of newspapers. It was the end of the age of newspapers. But the idea to hey, go to the internet and just start creating. Just start creating and start thin slicing stuff and just start building yourself. I think that was really, really prescient advice. And I don't know. I assume, and not thought about it, I assume I would have gone to the Ringer without that advice. But I would have had a different mentality. I would have been a little more scared, frankly. I would have been a little more hesitant and saying, oh my gosh, the coach of the Broncos doesn't want to meet with me. No. Just give it time. And build it. And one of the things I think with Rolapp and the PGA Tour, I think is important to know is that just from his time on the NFL, they don't skip steps. They're going to build it, and they're going to build it the right way. And I think that's the most important thing. I would be very surprised if in a year they come out with all sorts of crazy bells and whistles and new plans and new strategies. No, I think it's going to be one step at a time, building it into the best that they can be. And again, that conversation with Rolapp, just changed the way I looked at media. Any job can be the best job in the world, and I think that anybody in media understands what that means now, or should understand what that means now. You could just throw on a podcast mic and change your life in a day, and that's all it takes. And he's understood that for a long time.
Yeah, I think it's, the fact that you had the comfort to be able to approach him, to ask him that, knowing, one, that you thought you would get an authentic and invested answer. It wasn't a line. It was something that he believed. I think that people who are fans of the PGA Tour should think about that, and they should be encouraged by that. You mentioned about not skipping steps. Do you think that he will bring some people with him? Do you expect that to be the case, that based on knowing kind of the makeup of the NFL office, that it wouldn't surprise you if some people that he trusts, that he believes have the chops to apply it somewhere else, are going to be going with him?
I would assume so, Gary. I asked a couple people I knew who just on the media side last week if they were going. And I think it's a little too early for specific names. I haven't heard any, nor do I know. I didn't get any, so-and-so is going. I think they're in the early stages. What I will say is there's two things that are important here. Number one is that there are a lot of smart people on the media side of the NFL. That proof is in the pudding when you look at how much money they're able to wrangle, the different TV packages they're able to have, and also even the bells and whistles as far as something like Amazon's Thursday night Prime Vision, where it's all 22, which means you can kind of see all 22 players at once, and the alternate feeds, and whether or not a player is blitzing before the snap. That all that stuff is so cool that I hope that some of those people are able to come to golf. But then the other thing is, there's a lot of golf fans at the league office. There's a lot of golf fans in the NFL. There are a lot of GMs who are probably raising their hands saying, man, if you need a number two, I'll come with you. A lot of people on the media side, a lot of people on the ops side. I mean, that's just how it goes. I don't think I play a lot of golf here in the tri-state area, and I think that 80% of the time I'm there, someone says, oh, so-and-so from the league office is a member here. And it's like, yeah, that tracks. And so my guess is, unlike a lot of places when someone leaves from league office, Gary, I think there's going to be people raising their hands saying, yeah, I want to go help the sport of golf become to reach its potential.
Listen, I really appreciate the time. Thank you for giving everybody your perspective on the new boss of the PGA Tour. Next time I see you, let's not just cross paths at a golf course. Let's actually play golf. Thank you,
golf,
my friend.
Baby. Thanks, Gary.
Okay, there is Kevin Clark, Omaha Productions, ESPN. We take a break, come back. I'll give you a few thoughts on where I am and why it's important when it comes to the game of golf. We're back on 5 Clubs Golf Channel and on SiriusXM's Channel 92 right after this. Back in with a couple minutes to go on this Monday again from Colorado Springs, Colorado on this Monday, not only on Golf Channel, but on SiriusXM's Channel 92. This segment brought to you by Pinehurst, the cradle of American golf, an anchor site for the USGA, for the U.S. Open, all their other great championships. And of course, with Pinehurst number 10, the new clubhouse and restaurant that's opening soon, the new cottages at number 8, always a good reason to be booking a trip to Pinehurst. Now, I mentioned being out here in Colorado Springs, and the Underrated Tour is something that I've been very fortunate to be a part of, our signature sports group at large, to contribute in a modest way to what Steph Curry has built. What he's built is something that it honestly is changing lives through the game of golf. And we had an event in London several weeks ago. That is the European side of things. We'll be having another event in Scotland. But the domestic event, the United States schedule, begins tomorrow. Practice rounds today. And where are we? We're on the campus of the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, Colorado, because the vision of Underrated is not just to give kids an opportunity to play tournament golf at no cost, by the way, and travel the country doing it with their parents, and to relieve them of that burden, but it's also to expose them to places that may inspire them academically. And so last year was the University of Notre Dame, and this year it is the Air Force Academy. And we can't wait to continue to take these kids to places that they're going to look at and go, yeah, golf, I'm going to hit my ceiling, but at some point golf can be a vehicle to change the trajectory of my life. So Steph's not here this week, but I can promise you, is heavily invested in everything that is going on Underrated. So it begins tomorrow. We hope that we're going to be able to originate. And there's a tweet from Steph just a few days away from season 4. For our new players, welcome to the family. To our returning players, we can't wait to see you again. To all the players, go get it this season. New champs, loading, Underrated. Yep. So it is starting tomorrow from the blue course, the Eisenhower golf courses on the campus of Air Force. Tomorrow, Tyler Ray is going to join me. We have had an extended conversation in our studios at Five Clubs with Tyler, who's one of the best young golf course designers in the business. Well, when the Rocket Mortgage ends next Sunday, his team's going in to do an extensive renovation to that Donald Ross gem. He joins me tomorrow. So we got that conversation and much more to get to with you. Have a great Monday for all of us here at Five Clubs. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody. Have a great day.